I started 4 separate businesses. 2 of them made the Inc. fastest growing companies 9 times. It didn't start that way. The first business, we were losing money, we were fighting with one another, and then I adopted a strategic planning approach to our business. It was remarkable, the difference. And so that led me down the journey of strategic planning. And then I took that strategic planning process, working with closely held business owners, and say, why can't we use this from a succession planning standpoint?
So glad you've been able to spend a couple days with us here at LeaderPath Studios. Our team has really been fascinated by what you do. So thank you for being here.
No, thank you, and your team did a great job.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Let's talk about your background and what you do, who you are. And I will say, as a entrepreneur and a business owner, I've loved listening to your amazing background and expertise, which I've found fascinating. Being an entrepreneur, being in business
Right.
myself, hearing buzzwords and things over the years, you really cleared a lot of it up. I know primarily your target group here that you're trying to equip are people like yourself to get certified. And I want to talk about that, but it's actually helped me, learning these things along the way. So let's talk about your background, where you got started.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I came out of Penn State and became a CPA for EY, which is an international accounting firm. After 4 years, I decided to go to law school, graduate from law school, and I practiced law for 37 years, working with closely held business owners. During that 37-year period, though, I started 4 separate businesses.
Okay.
Fortunately, 2 of them made the Inc. fastest growing companies 9 times.
That's impressive.
But
That's
Jamie,
impressive.
I got to tell you, it didn't start that way. The first business, we were losing money, we were fighting with one another, and then I adopted a strategic planning approach to our business.
Hmm.
It was remarkable, the difference. And so that led me down the journey of strategic planning. And then I took that strategic planning process, working with closely held business owners, and say, why can't we use this from a succession planning standpoint? And that's what got me on the road of succession planning.
Now, when I think of succession planning, I think of different keywords and buzzwords, but tell me what most people think when they think succession planning and what your definition is so our listeners can follow.
A great question. And there's a lot of misunderstandings about what succession planning. It's not selling your business. In fact, most business owners don't want to sell their business, right? It's not your will. It's not sticking everything into a trust. It's not tax planning. All right. If that's what it's not, what is it? I tell people it's the transfer of 3 things.
Okay.
It's a transfer of knowledge, management, and ownership. And in the business, if you don't do all 3, it's going to happen to you whether you like it or not.
I remember part of the training program you just created, you had a couple quotes from movies, and I think about the Godfather quote. What was the scene? And instantly it took me back to watching it, but it had to do with that field, with exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, Fredo says to Mike, I was passed over. I was your older brother, Mike. What does Mike say? That's not the way Pop wanted it. Fredo says, that ain't the way I want it. I'm smart. I can get stuff done. I'm not stupid like they say. Yeah, it's classic succession planning issues that are not just in the United States, as you know, Jamie, it's worldwide.
Yeah. And you see, I guess what motivated you to do that? Was there anything in your own background with your businesses? Because that to me is a family dynamic, even beyond the business dynamic.
Yeah.
The way you describe that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, I don't think it was any one thing as it was a multiple of things, right? And so I come from a failed 3rd generation business. My great-grandfather had a phenomenal transportation excavation business. My grandfather and his brother took it, and when they transferred to the next generation, the brothers couldn't get along and it was lost.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Then I worked with lots of business owners, and I kept seeing this failure that wasn't necessarily related to my expertise, taxes and legal. There was more to it. And so again, I said, how can I help these people? And that's what sort of led me down that road to continue to improve the process, as well as trying to educate myself about succession planning, what other people had done in the past.
Are there any, like nowadays, are there stats that say, because you're cutting the success and potential in half between those generations, the way you described it, or even more?
That's right. And so the general statistics that are out there, if nothing is done, 70% of the time, the business will not make it to the next generation. By the way, again, a worldwide phenomenon. But what's really kind of neat is there was a study done a number of years ago that said, okay, if that's the case, why? Why is there a failure, right? Unfortunately for the CPA lawyer, I didn't get the answer I wanted. I say that jokingly because they said only 15% of the time was it due to a lack of a technical or legal issue.
Hmm.
60% of the time, it was the inability to communicate or trust. So it's not like you're going to steal my lunch. It's, Jamie, will you have that report on my desk on Monday? Where's Jamie? He's gone. I can't trust you. So 60% of the time, it's communication and trust. 25% is an ill-prepared successor. So I tell business owners, think about this. 85% is within their control, right?
And I guess losing that business, you made a comment that was very impactful. And it's not just, it doesn't just impact the business owner who doesn't get to have a good legacy transition there,
Right.
but it's affecting obviously their family, but also you said the community. You
That's
said
right.
employees. You gave the whole list. You forget the ripple effect
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. People don't realize over 60% of our GDP is generated by closely held businesses. So what happens if that closely held business doesn't make it? The employees are affected, their families are affected, the community is affected. It's really a disheartening experience when a business fails like that.
Are boomers in as we look at the aging demographic, is that affecting this space more, or is it kind of the same as it's been for the last 10, 20 years?
No, it's accelerated with an additional issue, right?
Okay.
And so PwC did a study recently that over 50% of all closely held businesses will have a transition in the next 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
What adds to that, remember I talked to you about a 70% failure rate. They believe the failure rate is going to accelerate because the millennials don't want to take over the business. There's less and less of them, so it's going to be harder and harder to figure it out.
Wow. Okay. So that's amazing. That's an amazing
Yeah.
stat. Amazing opportunity to help people too. So let's talk about the succession solution.
Right.
You wrote a book,
Right.
and that's where kind of this started, of you taking what worked for you essentially,
Right.
and you put it into written form, and then it's kind of taken a new life of its own here a little bit. But let's
Right.
talk about what that is and how we solve this problem.
Yeah. And so even if I could take a step back before that, I developed a succession planning process and it really worked. And I kept using it and using it.
For
And I
your
said-
clients.
For my clients.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And I said to myself, well, how can I spread the word? How can I make it better for more people? I wrote the book. And the other benefit of writing the book is sort of forces you to think through the process.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very well received. It's been sold in 14 different countries. Right?
Nice.
So then I said, okay, well, that's great. How can I help other business advisors? Because what I see a lot of times, Jamie, is people coming in, as I like to joke, they have the 900-pound hammer. And whatever they got, that's the nail they're going to pound, whether it's insurance, whether it's money management, whether it's law, whether it's taxes. Not that any one of them is wrong, but they didn't learn that multi-discipline approach that I've developed. And I thought if I could share that with them, they could only become better. There's no downside to this, right? It only improves the process.
So in essence, taking what you've kind of proven has worked for your clients, and now you've created a program to equip other business advisors. And business advisors, give us that definition. Like who would that be?
Another great question, because this isn't for someone that's fresh out of law school or fresh out of undergrad. I suggested there be a minimum of 5 years of business advising experience. So it's CPAs, lawyers, financial advisors, life insurance, business coaches, strategists, anybody that's working closely with the business owner or the key stakeholders, I say stakeholders, with the CEO, needs to appreciate this skill set and develop this discipline. They only become better advisors.
So you don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to be a CPA. How does that work? Because in my mind, the multi-discipline approach would require some knowledge there. Are you also using this program to encourage people to go find experts in that area, or how do you do that?
Yeah. And so when you take a client through this process, what's going to happen is you're going to identify certain needs that other professionals will be able to provide.
Okay.
So I'm not all things to all people.
Okay.
I have a certain skill set. And if there's a financial aspect that is an investment aspect. I'm not an investment advisor. So I need to go out and talk to that investment advisor for Mr. Client and say, can you help him determine how much he needs to retire? And so when you go through this process, you'll learn that this is a team approach. This is not an individual sport.
But what a valuable asset you are to your client, in that you don't have to be the Swiss Army knife, so to speak. But if you were playing point or you're helping coach them through that, that's massive. So that's what this is. That's what this program's all about.
Yeah, to use that often used term, you become the quarterback, right? And so you identify these issues with your client and say, okay, there's a great book, Not How, But Who. You find out who can help you, not how you can do it. Don't try to do it all.
But that knowledge and what you teach, technically, you're going to learn a basis for how to guide that, how to be that quarterback.
That's right.
Okay.
I try to help other advisors know what questions to ask and the traps for the unwary. And so when they sort of working through that, they identify, oh, I remember this issue. I have to go get a CPA. I remember this issue. I can handle it. I remember this issue. We need to talk about insurance, or the fears and the concerns of a business owner. So how to walk through that. So there are all sorts of disciplines you learn throughout the process.
Okay. Can you give us an example of maybe one of these that once the advisor learns this and communicates that with their client, it's a big win? I mean, like, can you give us an example of one?
Yeah. And so although many advisors may be aware of this, lots of business owners are afraid to transfer their ownership for fear of losing control. Okay? And so one technique that you can use is have the business owner create voting and non-voting stock, whether it's an LLC, a corporation. And so an example would be, hey, Mr. Business Owner, we can transfer 99% of the equity, the value, to the next generation. You can hold on to one share of stock and still be in control. Lots of advisors don't know that. So that's one example of how you can help your clients transfer.
That's amazing. And so in that same context, so basically what that means, let me just repeat that because that's really interesting. So you can have 99% of the equity be in the hands of the next generation or whoever you're transitioning to. But that 1% is equity, but it can still maintain the control of voting power or voting rights.
That you can hire, fire, decide what distributions to make, whether to sell the company or not. It's a very, very powerful technique that when you give the business owner the options, hey, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, they feel more comfortable thinking about it. Because if their buddy at the country club said, you can't do that, you can't do that, what do? They go into shutdown mode. But the more options you give them, the more comfortable they become.
Yeah. One of the things you teach or you have is this roadmap. And I loved looking at it. And the way that it reads is literally a flow, a process, left to right, if you will. And then you break it down to stages and explain, start here. So I'm the advisor right now. And you're saying, take your client, Jamie, if you're the advisor, and walk them through this. Can you give us a snapshot of what that roadmap, first of all, where you came up with it, and then what it does?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I started in business doing strategic planning when all my businesses were failing, right? And so with strategic planning, Keith Cunningham, I mentioned in the program, wrote Down the Road Less Stupid. He said strategic planning is real simple. You identify where you want to go. You identify where you are. You identify what's in your way, because if there was nothing in your way, you wouldn't be there. You build a machine to get over it, and you turn it on and see how it works. That's 6. By the way, my roadmap is 6 stages.
Okay.
We identify with the purpose stage. Then we identify where we are. Then I call it the challenge stage. We identify the obstacles. Then we say, okay, if we're sitting here 3 years from today, what would we like to have happen? And then 1 year from today, and then where the magic happens is, what are we going to do over the next 90 days? And that advisor helps the client think through, what are those things we can do in the next 90 days to move us closer to the annual goal, to move us closer to our 3-year goal, to move us closer to our vision.
And is that because most people don't get off the starting block and they're just uncertain or they don't know, so they just never begin?
Yeah. Don Shula once said, It's the start that stops most people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this is a way to absolutely get them off the starting block and do that.
That's right. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard the monkey paw example. So when the big ships come in, they can't throw the gigantic rope over the side. It'll kill somebody. What they do is they have a tennis ball with a short little thin string. They throw the tennis ball over. Person grabs it, gets a little thicker, gets a little thicker, gets a little thicker, right? That's how this roadmap works. We start from a very, very big picture. What's our vision? What are our core principles and values? Why do we want to do this? Don't get into the specifics. When you do that, you're going to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah. And I remember thinking when you were going through purpose, I thought you meant what's the purpose of my business or what's the purpose of your business? And that's not what you meant by purpose. So
No,
when you talk about this plan, what do you mean by the
yeah.
purpose?
And Stephen Covey once said, "We're driven by values. We actually set our lives based on our values. Whether I value health, whether I value money, my family, my God, whatever those motivate you. And so if you can get the business owner and the important stakeholders to agree on their value system, the relationship becomes stronger. And that's how we're going to treat one another. So in the meeting, if I start yelling and screaming at you, I'm violating the value system that we agreed upon. And that's our compass. That keeps us in line.
So it pertains literally to this plan, not necessarily about the purpose of our company and all that we already have in place. It's really about how's this going to transition? How's this succession plan going to happen?
Well, and I would go one step further.
Okay.
By defining the values and the principles, it should reflect the culture of the company. So it's not just about this plan. It's how we treat one another. Whether we respect other people's opinion, we respect that this will be a family business forever. We respect the golden rule. We need to identify those. I mean, we're down to ground zero at these. It's not just about succession. It's how the business operates day to day.
That's amazing. So what you've created a certification program.
Right.
It's in a great way, robust. You did a fantastic job, by the way. I think people are going to really love watching you communicate because you're a conversational, fun guy, but you know your stuff, which is fantastic.
Thanks.
What motivated you to do that? What got you off of that starting block, if you will, to go, I'm going to go create a training program, create a course like this?
As I'd mentioned earlier, I started this process. I said, hey, this is really cool. This is really helping people. Then I wrote the book, again, helping people. I want to help advisors what I know. And it's a passion that I have because more and more people, more and more advisors who know this can help more and more business owners who can help their families and who can help their community.
It's a ripple effect. It's
right.
the impact.
That's right.
That's right. Awesome. So can you just walk us through some of the key components of this program and the modules and how you've organized it?
Happy to. So what I first want to do is level set for the advisors. What is succession planning and what isn't it for the purposes of this program? Then I want to explain to them what the statistics and history shows us. There's a lot to be learned about what's happened in the past and information that you can use not only with your client, as well as feel more comfortable with what we need to do going forward. Then identify those unintended consequences that can occur that nobody sees coming. Because I've been doing this for 30 years. I mean, I tell people, I'm no smarter than you. I've just seen this movie many times. I think I know how it ends, right? So we talk about that. And then we start to begin explaining the succession solution process. The succession solution process is demonstrated, is evidenced by using the succession solution roadmap. Because I believe in any major undertaking, you sort of have to start with the basics, again, identify where you are and move forward.
You really hit a lot of the basics too, in a great way, in a different angle when we talked about structure and you talked about how you get into, I believe it's even how you bring in a CEO, the roles and responsibilities of the advisory board or of the board, and how they set compensation for. So you got into the details that I think are going to be great for those that don't have that, but who are qualified to go through the certification program. So I mean, I think you really hit some important pieces there.
Yeah, I really thank you. I really think that it's important to provide some practical examples and help. It's great to have theory, right? We all learn about theory in college or the universities, but unless an advisor learns some practical tips, then the program is not as much value. And so I'm trying to bring my experience as a business owner, as an attorney, as a CPA, as a succession solution consultant to say, hey, when you're about to engage or hire a CEO, just don't put an ad in LinkedIn, or if it's your son or daughter that wants it, what is the qualifications of that CEO? By the way, it's not the CEO today. It might be the CEO we need in 5 years from now. And then say, hey, if you want to be the CEO, these are the standards, and establish a test. And it's those types of ideas I think the advisor, once they go through the program, will appreciate.
Do you believe that if they don't have all of your degrees and certifications and your history, do you believe they can walk through this program, walk through this training, and by the time they're done, are equipped to begin practicing this with their clients?
Yes. And that's why I wrote the book. And that's why I developed the roadmap, because I believe this roadmap is simple. It may not be easy. What do I mean by simple? It's simple to understand. There's 6 components. Working through them are hard, but if the business advisor takes the program and follows this roadmap, they don't have to be a CPA. They don't have to be a lawyer. Does it help? Sure, it helps. But you know what? It also helps if you got 20 years of experience working with clients. It's not legal. It's not tax. Remember, 15% of the time there's a failure, it's a tax and legal issue. It's all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's all the other stuff.
Yeah.
You did some referencing to Nick Saban, and he talked about the process. So it's almost like if you could have the playbook and you could execute the playbook in the process, then you can win.
Yeah.
That's your
it's sort of like, the recipe for a great meal. It's impossible to do it yourself, but if someone hands you the recipe, you can do it pretty consistently time and time again.
Yep, absolutely. What makes this different in your mind from what's out there? Because I know you've been around long enough, seen probably some great courses and some great training. What makes this certification program different for an advisor?
In my experience, Jamie, in the succession planning world for closely held businesses, there's usually 2 camps. By the way, there's nothing wrong with either camp, right? The first camp is the therapist. You have an emotional, psychological issue with your family, yourself. Let's work on the more soft stuff, right? And then there are the technicians. Let's do a trust. Let's do a transfer of equity and all that kind. And there's the technical part. And the 2 never sort of bridge together. And so, as I said, what I tried to do, what's different in this program, is combine the 2 using a strategic planning process. Not to keep using this term again, but I believe it works. And how do I know it believes it works? Because I've done hundreds of these and I can count on my hand how many failures there were. And most of them I walked away from.
I was going to ask you, what would be an example of a failure, like what to avoid, pitfalls?
Yeah. And so a client that knows everything.
Okay. Yep.
So when a client knows everything, they don't need you, right? It's a great question, because what I tell lots of clients that if you aren't listening to me, look, it's their plan, not my plan. But if they're not using my counsel, I'm of no value. And so if we work collectively, I feel more comfortable. And as an advisor that's been working with business owners for more than 5 or 6 years who would take this program, they should get that part. But the other time is when they violate the basic values and principles they said it was all about. And if there's not integrity, again, I want to be successful, Jamie, and advisors want to be successful when working with business owners.
So looking toward the future, where do you see succession planning going, and how will this equip advisors for the future?
I think succession planning is going to become more and more pronounced as the baby boomer generation starts to exit out, because there's so many of them. I also think people are becoming more sophisticated. They know it's not about any one thing. And then lastly, I think that other advisors, because the competition is so fierce out there, need to learn new disciplines. How do you distinguish yourself?
How you differentiate?
Exactly. From the competition, right? Because You constantly have to iterate. And I believe this is a unique spot where you can get real close with your client and help them.
Well, what I love about this program is, and by definition, in a lot of ways, it's in some ways your succession program. You're taking things you've learned, obviously, client experience, your knowledge, and also your relational skills, which you clearly have,
Right.
to pass along and help that impact. So I love the connection of that, and we got to see part of your legacy. We had Kate in here with us today,
That's
who's
right.
a rock star.
Thank you very
I
much.
wish she didn't live in California and work for Disney. I'd have her here with us.
Thank you.
She was fantastic. So I know family's important to you. I know that legacy is important to you. So
That's
that was
right.
really fun to have her in here too, to do it. So,
Thank you.
what would be your words for anybody trying to reach you or connect with you, and how to find you? Are you taking on new clients, or are you like, my plate's full?
No, although I'm busy,
Mhm.
I'm always taking on new clients,
Mhm.
and I always want to help people.
Mhm.
So if someone wants to call me, hey, I got this issue, I got that issue. I just can't say no. I had two sisters who inherited a golf course from their parents. They read my book and they said, I know we can't afford you, but can we talk through it? I said, sure, absolutely. You can reach out to me. So you can search me on the internet. Actually, there's a Wikipedia page.
Nice, nice.
www.successionsolution.com.
Okay.
They can just check out my website
Mhm.
and send me an email. I'm happy to talk to
That's
anybody.
great. I think and I know you speak. I know you're on stage. You do different conferences. I think that would be you're an excellent person to bring in. I think also a workshop environment. Watching how you are with people. I can imagine people would love to take the course and then be able to be in person with you. Maybe do a Q&A. Are you going to do anything like that, even virtually, for those who become certified or get certified? Is that part of the plan, or?
It is part of the plan. After Leader Pass completes this quality certification course, which I know they will,
Yep.
the idea is to take it to the next level. So people want to take the course, and then we'll schedule monthly meetings where they can call in and say, hey, Brad, can you explain this? Can you explain that? And work through that. But that is the idea.
That's awesome. Well, I
Thank
think
you.
you're the guy to do it.
Thank you.
I'm super honored to have you on Leader Pass and have you in here with us in the studio. So I want you to come back and do more with you. But this has been a pleasure having you here, and I look forward to what's going to happen in your future.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, up
Appreciate
high. Up high. Yes.
it.